What's up, Steelers Nation? Welcome back into another episode of Bite Size Steelers. I am your host, Simon Short. We are here to recap the 26-22 Steelers victory on Monday night over division rival Cleveland Browns. It was certainly an ugly game and a very, very AFC North game that, unfortunately or fortunately, the whole world got to witness on Monday Night Football and not be very excited about. There are some very interesting things to take away from this game, but mostly just know that this is what a divisional matchup looks like in the AFC North. But we're going to go by it bit by bit. We'll look at the different position groups, how they performed. We'll look at a few of the drives, a few of the play calls, and of course some of the injuries. So to start out, first we'll talk about something non-Steeler related here for a second. Obviously, Nick Chubb went out with a season-ending knee injury, running back for the Cleveland Browns. Just a terrible situation, terrible injury. You hate to see it, no matter who you root for, who your team is. And it always feels like there's a few of these players in the AFC North on the rival teams that even Steeler fans just love. And Nick Chubb, I think, was one of those, and is one of those for another AFC North team and for Cleveland specifically. So just thoughts out for Nick Chubb. Hope he recovers well in the rehab process and can get back onto the field at some point. We know how running backs and the injuries and the contracts and everything is right now, but just hope for the best for Nick Chubb. On the Steelers end of it, a couple injuries. Obviously the big one being Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's evaluated for a chest injury. No clear identification yet on what exactly it is. Probably just some sort of contusion of sorts. I believe he sustained it when he chased down Jerome Ford on that big touchdown, or near touchdown run, I should say, 69-yard touchdown saving run, the tackle that he was part of. So I haven't seen anything yet on what the deal is for that, but when we do the preview show later in the week, we will have an injury report and we'll be able to more closely react and analyze what could happen for Minkah in terms of how long or if he will miss any time. From an injury perspective, since last time we had an episode, Deontay Johnson is officially on IR, as well as running back Anthony McFarland. So a couple guys are now on IR for the Steelers that obviously had very big roles for the team. Des Fitzpatrick, who was elevated to the 53-man roster for the game, has reverted back to the practice squad. The initial information was he was getting signed to the 53. That is not the case. Braden Fehoko, nose tackle, today, as I record this, it is Wednesday the 20th, has been signed to the 53-man roster, reported by Ian Rappaport. So we'll make sure that gets actually put through the transactions. For the preview show, we'll talk about that, where the 53-man roster stands with Cam Hayward, Deontay Johnson, and Anthony McFarland all being on IR. So now let's get to the game. It was an ugly game for sure. It starts out fantastic. Pittsburgh gets a pick six on the very first play of the game. You love to see that. And then the Browns just kind of rattled off a handful of first downs right off the bat afterwards. So the Browns were able to recover pretty quickly from that and withstand and were able to mount a drive with a lot of first downs. A lot of the first downs that they converted were coming on the ground. Sure, that there were a few through the air. Amari Cooper definitely had a good game in this one. He ended up going for, 7 catches for 90 yards on 10 targets. A very efficient game for Amari Cooper, who's doing it on both sides against Levi Wallace and against Patrick Peterson. Neither of which had the best day, especially Levi Wallace. He's taking the brunt of it right now. Such is life as a cornerback. Just like offensive linemen, you can look really good for about 10 games in a row, and you have one bad game, and it really stands out. So got to be able to bounce back. We'll talk about a couple of the Levi Wallace plays later, but the Browns were able to convert a good number of first downs after the pick six. A lot of that was on the ground, and a lot of it was just poor execution from a run stopping standpoint. You could talk about bad angles being taken, poor tackling when you get to the point of attack, but also just not sound gap assignments, not sound, okay, I'm going to do my job and I'm going to protect this side. A lot of wanting to run to the ball, wanting to make a play, which is nice, is good to see. But if you do that before the ball carriers actually stopped, right? So a lot of it was it was Nick Chubb early. Chubb would be running to a gap of the offensive line, and then everybody would converge on that gap before contact was made. And then Chubb would bounce the other way and get the handful of yardage that he needed. You have to hold your and I'm not a coach. I'm not going to say this, but looking at it, you would think everyone's got to hold their gap until that first man gets hands on Chubb, and then you rally to the ball, right? So I seeing some better, more sound tackling and more sound assignments will be key, because Levi Wallace on that big 69-yard run by Ford, same thing. Ford was running to the right, Wallace is covering the backside, and he is running straight to Ford, who then cuts back and gets a good angle on him. Wallace had just kind of maintain his side, maintain what he was doing. He might have been in better position to make that tackle. So just gotta, and I'm not putting it all on Wallace, but that is just an example there. We saw that a lot, particularly from the linebackers. Quan Alexander had a couple. I think Cole Holcomb might have had one. So just holding your gaps and then rallying to the ball once the ball carrier has been kind of wrapped up is what I would like to see from the Steelers moving forward. And then from there, it's 7-3 in the first quarter, and this Browns defense is legit. So let's get into the positional breakdown now. I wanted to hit that tackling thing first, because through 2 weeks, the Steelers are just about the worst run defense in the NFL. We saw this happen 2 years ago with the Steelers, where inexplicably, Tyson Alualu can't play nose tackle, and all of a sudden it's the worst run defense in the NFL. So this happened to the Steelers recently. And I wanted to hit that because similarly to what we talked about coming out of the 49ers game, the linebacker play has to be consistent if you're going to continue to ask these guys to do a lot. And the Steelers definitely asked the linebackers to do a lot. Again, in this one, they did perform better than in the Niners game, but that is one example, one thing I don't want to see every single week, because it's going to be a long season. If 0-yard runs are going to be 5-yard runs, and 5-yard runs are going to be 10 yards, and 10 is going to be 60 plus for a touchdown. But let's turn it over to the offense, and we'll go kind of position by position. Quarterback Kenny Pickett, 15-30, 222 yards, a touchdown, a pick, took 2 sacks. Not a great game. Not a great game. I would say the last 2.5 quarters were substantially better than the first quarter and a half, just from a opportunity to do anything standpoint. It took the big George Pickens 71-yard touchdown to open things up, because at the beginning of the game, and give it up to the Cleveland Browns, their front, I think, is real, because they were just stifling anything. There was no room for Pickett to try and move around in the pocket. There was no room to get any kind of running game going. There was no room, it felt like, to even throw a pass. It felt like every just pass attempt was a miracle to get off, because that Browns defensive line was in control of the game for about the first 20 minutes of game time, I'd say. Guess what? We're going to start tracking this. 3 straight pass plays yet again for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. Kenny Pickett drops back 3 times in a row, gets a short completion to Allen Robinson to the right side, gets a incomplete, I believe, to Allen Robinson again on the right side the next play. And then on 3rd down, Kenny Pickett throws an interception. Ugly interception. Looked like, so there was 3 receivers to the left, Freiermuth all the way in, Pickens next, and then I think Calvin Austin might have been all the way to the outside. Freiermuth is running some sort of shallow crosser, trying to open things up for Pickens to come with a slant behind him. Safety Greg Delpit is on Freiermuth, and Pickett either didn't see Delpit at all or thought that the Browns were in man and thought Delpit was going to just follow Freiermuth, and without double checking, tries to throw to Pickens on the slant and completely is fooled by the defense, and Delpit gets that interception. Kenny was still moving too fast. He was still, trying to, he was still kind of like struggling to maintain his composure in the pocket, know where he wanted to be in the pocket, and read the defense while he was doing that. Again, once that 71-yard touchdown happened to George Pickens halfway through the second quarter, then things kind of opened up. Less guys were in the box. Less guys were coming with pressure. They had to respect the ability for a deep play to cover George Pickens, who ended up having a good game, 4 catches, 127 yards, a touchdown on 10 targets. It looked like Pickens and Pickett were starting to develop that 1-2 chemistry again. But definitely some inaccuracy from Pickett still, because there were still some underthrown balls to Pickens, some things that came in a little too quick, a little too hot, that Kenny Pickett still needs to clean up. But I would say the last 2.5 quarters were somewhat encouraging, but still not great, because coming out of the half, and I know we're jumping around on the timeline a bit, but to stay on Kenny Pickett, coming out of the half, first play, again, it's a pass play. It's a play action boot, and Pickett's rolling right, and I guess he's trying to throw the ball away, but it was not very well thrown away. I mean, if you're going to throw the ball away, man, throw that ball away. And instead, it's a pass that I think the idea was, hey, this is either going to go out of bounds or it's going to go to Najee. But the backup safety, I forget who it was now, got his hands on it. And it was almost an interception on the first play of the second half. And those are just things that in an AFC North game that ends up being 4 points can't happen. So Pickett, I would say, if you take a look, especially at the rest of the second half, was just able to move the ball at least and be in the pocket. When the pocket was clean and there was room, he did operate it very well. There was a third down conversion he had to George Pickens, a 3rd and 10, where he did have room in the pocket, and he actually climbed the pocket 2-3 hitches and was able to get a good throw off. So he can do it. He's not completely broken after a season and an off season or anything like that. But the offensive line will need to, I guess, give him really clean pockets unless he's going to, as the season goes, just kind of settle in and be able to operate in a muddy pocket without getting stressed out and without, completely losing his cool and where he's at. Looking at the run game and the running backs, Najee Harris, 10 carries for 43 yards. He had a nice 21-yard run that was on a cutback after he had just had a 14 or 15-yard run the play before. And then Jaylen Warren had 6 runs for 20 yards, so not much better, but Warren 4 catches for 66 yards. Obviously huge in the pass game. Jaylen Warren did have did basically allowed the sack on Kenny Pickett. That was in the fourth quarter. He missed an assignment on a block, but on the George Pickens 71-yard touchdown reception, I'm going to keep saying that because Steelers don't get 71-yard touchdowns very often, so I'm just going to keep saying it. That play doesn't happen without Jaylen Warren converting a 3rd and 10, and he gets a pass out of the flat, and is stopped short, about 3 yards short, and fights for the extra yardage. And stuff like that, Steeler fans will sometimes look at and say that means he's better than Najee Harris, and that's not exactly necessarily true, but it is something that Warren is very good at. He does have some juice, and he does fight for extra yardage despite being the smaller back. So huge props to him, because that touchdown doesn't come without Warren being able to pull that off. We'll talk about another player who has a very significant role in that touchdown here in a few minutes. When it comes to the running game, something I wanted to see, I tweeted this at halftime, again, at Simon_short with 2 T's. For Steeler fans that want to follow along, I live tweet as many of the games that I can watch live. Something I wanted to see because of the way the game was going. Najee obviously wasn't getting anything going in the first half. We'll talk about some of the play calls in a minute. I wanted to see Jaylen Warren get a crack at some of the longer down run plays, because if he has a little bit more juice and he can even scamper for 4 or 5 yards on first down, yeah, it's not great, but then you can get into a mode where you're operating on short yardage and utilizing Najee's ability to run between the tackles and break some tackles. They did do that a little bit in the third quarter. Jaylen Warren had a couple first and second down run plays, and they worked. They were successful. I think the first down, one went for 6. Second down, one might have gone for like 2 or 3, something like that. So that and that's what you want to see. It doesn't have to be a home run every single play, but you do want to see some more successful runs. So I think getting, instead of Jaylen Warren being a true third down back, if they're swapping out on series, or might have to have the conversation at some point about Jaylen Warren, taking over as your first and second down back, and Najee's more your short yardage and goal line guy. Not what you want, and still a little early for that, but it is a possibility down the line. Looking at the receivers, Pickens, like I said, had a great game. Just a more nuanced route runner. He's running some slants. He's running some crossers, some overs. He's doing different things, which is good to see. Allen Robinson had the catch early. He had another catch later on in the game. Jaylen Warren was good out of the backfield. Calvin Austin, the third, 1 catch for 10 yards, which was on one of Kenny Pickett's more impressive throws of the day. It was a third down. I don't know if it was necessarily a comeback or just like a back shoulder, but something right at the first down marker that Kenny Pickett had to zip in there really on target because it was contested, and Calvin Austin did a nice job going to the ground, staying in bounds, and getting that first down. But Austin also threw a key block on George Pickens' 71-yard touchdown play, where Pickens runs the slant over the middle. He outruns one defender. The only one there left is Denzel Ward, and Calvin Austin throws a block and frees Pickens up to get that touchdown. So without the likes of Warren and Austin doing those little things, converting the dirty plays, not dirty plays, converting, like getting the hard yards, right? Doing the dirty work. You don't have that big explosive play for the touchdown, and you probably don't win the game. Tight ends, nothing really to speak of. Pat Freiermuth, 1 catch for 2 yards officially on a screen pass. Darnell Washington didn't register a catch. I saw him get rolled a couple times in some run blocking scenarios. I mean, he's trying to block true defensive ends, which is why you drafted him. So he had some better blocks against 49ers, but a tough one here against the Browns. Speaking of tough games, Gunnar Olszewski, wide receiver, sort of. He also was the return man in this one as the kick returner with Anthony McFarland out. The first kickoff that he catches inbounds right before the ball goes out of bounds. He gets his toes in. It looked like a nice catch if it was an offensive play, but instead the Steelers start with the ball. Let me double check this. I think it was like at the 9. At the 9-yard line was that Steelers' first drive that ended in a Kenny Pickett interception. A tough move there by Gunnar, because Gunnar was originally signed to this team to be the kick and punt returner. He lost that job last year, gets an opportunity to win at least the kick job back. And he makes that play. That's a bonehead play. You can't do it. Things did not get better for Gunnar. A couple drives later, he catches a ball in the flat on a broken play. We'll be honest here, and just gets crushed and fumbles the ball. We won't sit here and deliberate the fumble or not fumble here, but fumbles the ball, and it going the other way for Cleveland now. Gunnar was then ruled out of the game. I believe he's in concussion protocol right now. So obviously, health-wise, hope the best for Gunnar. Steelers-wise and football-wise, hope he is not suiting back up for the Steelers anytime soon. Excuse me. Overall, with the offense, like I said, things opened up a little bit in the latter part of the second quarter and in the second half. You saw some improvement from Kenny Pickett, a couple nice throws, but still a lot of accuracy issues, which, I mean, a big reason why the Steelers took Kenny Pickett was, hey, the maturity, he's not going to be rattled, and the accuracy that he displayed some in college. And none of those things are showing up right now. And again, if your offensive game plan, if your opening script is going to be to put the ball in this guy's hands and go make plays against good defenses, I don't think it's going to work out long term. I'll sit here and say this again. I'm going to be predicting in the preview episode that they're going to run the ball first. And I think if they don't, they're really going to be shooting themselves in the foot. I want to see them get this run game going. I'd like to see Jaylen Warren continue to get more early down work on long down and distance. And then just continue to feed George Pickens. Don't slow this train down. I hope Kenny Pickett can get a little more accurate, get him a few more catches. And then from there, who can step up? Can Pat Freiermuth get going on this offense or not? Can Calvin Austin get a few more? Can Allen Robinson make a few more first downs? We will continue to just kind of track the progression of this offense, which I thought we did right through the second half of last season and through the preseason. After the progression was done, and we're just going to be evaluating the execution of the offense week in and week out. It seems we are not quite there, Steelers Nation. So that top half of the league offense with a ceiling of a stretch goal of maybe 12th or so, that might be out of question if this is where we're truly starting off at. Obviously, playing the Raiders next week should be a good get right game, because that is not a good defense out in Vegas. Let's flip over to the defense now. Not a bad performance on the day for majority of the group. Like I said, still asking a lot of the linebackers who played better. Cole Holcomb even had a forced fumble and a tackle for loss that eventually was on the drive that was eventually the fumble 6. So the linebackers were okay. I didn't think they were a liability by any means. Quan Alexander led the team with 9 total tackles. I did think he was a culprit of a lot of the gap unsoundness on a few of those run plays, but I think, yeah, he had a tackle for loss as well. So, I mean, he still made his plays. Landon Roberts, same thing. He had a nice goal line stop before the Browns were able to run it in on the next play anyways. But he got beaten coverage by Njoku at least once. Just it's a lot, but hopefully this is a sign of things to come. This is obviously much earlier in the year than last year's linebackers started to make some splash plays because the Steelers linebackers did not register any splash plays, interceptions, forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, anything like that. That was tracked by Steelers Depot. So that is at least, encouraging. We have a forced fumble from a linebacker. That's great stuff. The defensive line was fine. Keanu Neal, I'll try to look at this while I'm speaking here, but he continues to stand out just on even live TV tape, let alone going back and watching. And when I go back and watch all 22, I'm sure it will even more. He was one that we thought might get a nice increase in snaps here in this game without Cam Hayward. I don't think he got a significant increase. That's what I'm going to find here for everybody. But it wasn't bad. Montravius Adams had good moments. He also had bad moments. Armand Watts was active for this game. He was fine. DeMarvin Leal got his first career sack, but he did get washed in the run game a couple times. Isaiah Loudermilk didn't really stand out. Let's see. Keanu Ben actually played fewer snaps in this game than he did against the 49ers, I guess, just because it was obviously a close game, but his snaps went down. He had, well, at least for the overall number of snaps, about the same, though, total. So 29 snaps against the 49ers, 28 snaps against the Browns, 43 and 32% respectively for the game. So they want to be around that 30 snap count, I guess, but hopefully that continues to increase because he was showing up on tape and looked pretty good. Let's get to the edge rushers, man, because that's the good stuff. TJ Watt getting his first career touchdown the same night that he becomes the Steelers' all-time leading sack getter. Alex Highsmith starting with the pick 6 and being the causer of the fumble that TJ Watt scooped and scored. I mean, those guys scored 14 points. The offense scored 12. So, yeah, it's a good thing that the Steelers are paying both of them the money they are paying, but they look great all night. They were good in the run game. They weren't great, especially Highsmith missed one of those early tackles in the first quarter that could have been like a 5-yard loss turned into a 5-yard gain. He did over pursue Watson on a couple of those. Deshaun Watson did manage the pocket well. I will give him that. He didn't have a great game overall, but he was elusive and tough in the pocket, hard to bring down. Some of that was some of the face masks, but they got the penalties when they needed them for those. But Highsmith and Watt had a great game. I thought Marcus Golden had a good game too. When he came in, he was active in the run game. Nick Herbig got washed in the run game a couple of times there, but he was a part of the Deshaun Watson, one of the face mask penalties. He had a good pursuit on him, might have been able to bring him down for his first regular season career sack had that face mask not happened. So overall, the edge rushers were very good in this one. Obviously, I would say the best unit on the team because they created the most points. Defensive backs, Minkah Fitzpatrick, like I said, obviously went out during the game, but he was involved in a lot of plays, a lot of tackles. I didn't notice him playing nickel quite as much. We'll see when the numbers officially come out. Maybe we'll talk about that in the preview if he is going to be able to play. I didn't notice him in the nickel as much, but he definitely was making a lot of plays, getting a lot of tackles, which is nice, but you don't want to see it. Talked about that in the preview show a few weeks ago. Demonte Casey and Keanu Neal both made plays, both tackling and in pass coverage. I thought Keanu Neal especially made some nice plays, defending the pass, getting his hands on a few balls. The corners, though, tough night. I said it for Levi Wallace, tough night. Patrick Peterson, not as drastic as the 49ers game, but had his highs and had his lows, gave up a catch and on a play where he committed a hold on Amari Cooper. So that's tough to see. But Joey Porter Jr. is the guy to talk about. Great game for him. He had 2 pass breakups, officially one on that 3rd and 8 in the first quarter, which led to the Browns only getting a field goal. And then obviously at the end of the game, he was involved in the last play of the game, which I said on Twitter, I'm not gonna lie, that was a hold. He held him for sure, but he was in the play. And sometimes you get lucky with some of those calls. And but he was there. And the Browns didn't get a catch and the Browns didn't score. So the fact that he's still in there in dime packages, I didn't see his official snap count, but I'm sure like Ben, it's the same as it was against the 49ers. But the way Peterson is playing, the way Levi Wallace played in this game, I predicted Joey Porter Jr. might start to become a more of a starter by halfway point of the year. We might start to see that trend too a little earlier, especially if Minka's out. Maybe they look to Joey Porter Jr. to be in nickel a little bit more. Desmond King was still inactive for this game, so we don't know when that might change for him. Elijah Riley got defensive snaps toward the end of the game when Minka Fitzpatrick was out, and he had a nice play. He got into the backfield on a couple of plays. So maybe he's opened up a role for himself. But Chandon Sullivan out of the nickel also got a pass deflection, which he's been working on. He's been trying to get that. We saw a little bit in preseason. He did a bit in the 49ers game. He's a guy that he can blitz a little bit, and he's got some length to him, and he's got some anticipation with the hands that he might get his hands on a few balls as well. Special teams, Chris Boswell, awesome as always. He went, 2 for 2. He had a 52-yarder. That was great. He was 2 for 2 on his extra points. Presley Harvin was excellent in this one. Probably the best game of his career. 7 punts, 320 yards, 2 touchbacks, 4 punts inside the 40, including one. His first punt went from his 25 to the Browns 10. So that is 25 for 65 yards with an extra bounce for another 5 yards. So a great punt there. And then another excellent coffin corner punt that put the Browns inside the 1. So specialists were great in this one as well. Larry Ogunjobi, I forgot to mention Larry Ogunjobi on the defensive line, had an excellent game. We weren't even sure if he was going to play when we did the preview show. But he had a great game all the way through, but especially that second or third defensive drive after the Kenny Pickett interception. He had a sack and a pressure on 1st and 3rd down of that drive for the Browns that knocked them out of field goal range and kept them out of field goal range because they ended up missing the field goal attempt there early on. So great job there by Ogunjobi. And then I will say, I didn't mention the offensive line, which is unlike me, as you'll learn. I thought they actually ended up being fine. Yes, they didn't get anything going in the run game, which you hate to see, but I think some of that is play call, some of that's situational, some of that's personnel. But obviously they need a better push in the run game. And I know they got pushed back in the pass game a lot, especially early on with all the pressures and heavy boxes Cleveland was bringing. But just the 1 sack or 2 sacks, sorry, on the day, and one of those was on Jaylen Warren. So overall, I did think they were fine. This was a good front, but I do expect everyone on this offense to dominate next week, including them. Overall thoughts on the defense, just better tackling, more sound, running to the ball, corners, everybody. Just keep the explosive plays down. But we'll talk about all of that more in the preview episode. All right, this has been your recap for Steelers Browns. Again, Steelers win 26-22. They go 1-1. 2 teams are now 1-1, Cleveland and Pittsburgh in the AFC North, with Baltimore at 2-0 and Cincinnati at 0-2. So that's your AFC North watch. We will talk again very soon to preview Steelers Raiders. But until then, make sure you guys are listening to all the pods on this feed for all teams. If you have interest in the other teams, check those out. But thank you to you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.